Welcome back to the Cohn Zone. This is Cohn and Lowell Cohn. We took a couple of weeks off, and since then the world has fundamentally changed. Now we can't even do the podcast together in the same room. We're doing it over the phone, and this week we're going to be talking about the 49ers and the virus. Let's get right into it. Dad, let's talk about free agency and start with DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead, the tough decision the Niners had to make. What do you think of that?
Well, let's say this. That's the biggest news. Not getting Brady is almost as big, but the biggest news is getting rid of Buckner. And what I have found in my years, which was covering sports 37 years on a daily basis, is that fans, and we are not fans, always support what the team does. And by the way, that's not my wisdom. That's Ira Miller always told me, look, Lowell, they'll always support it. So you and I have certain misgivings about getting rid of Buckner and keeping Armstead. On my Twitter, and I think on yours, fans almost universally support what the team did.
And so ironically is before they made this move, they would have universally panned it. I mean, someone asked on Twitter about a month before, if you had to keep Armstead or Buckner, who would you keep? And universally, Niners fans said, Buckner, of course, he's so much better. Then the team does something different, and the Niner fans, they're upset for maybe 45 minutes. Then they figure out a way to get behind it, because that's what you're supposed to do as a fan.
Right. And you know, I understand that. So
me too.
God love the fans.
Yeah.
What we're going to say is what we honestly feel, because we're journalists and we're not involved, and we don't really have an investment if the team wins or loses or what their moves are, but we try to give, to the best of our ability, a realistic and a truthful assessment of what happened. So what do I think of this? I think if I were the coach or the general manager, I would have kept Buckner and I would have gotten rid of Armstead. And I honestly don't know why they made the decision they made. Iggy, do you know why they made the decision they made?
Yeah, Armstead's cheaper. Armstead didn't have leverage. He only had one good year out of 5, and he was basically willing to play ball with whatever the Niners were offering. And Buckner has been terrific for 4 years. He never complained when they were bad. He didn't take any concessions from the 49ers, and nor should he. And I think the Niners, by and large, prefer to do business with people like Armstead than Buckner. Players who have a little less leverage, players who have an injury or things like that, historically.
Okay. Well, let's say we understand that, and that's their business, and they certainly are a massively improved franchise. But Buckner is not only a better player than Armstead. As you've pointed out, he's the second best defensive player in the league next to Aaron Donald.
I would say the second best defensive tackle.
Defensive tackle.
Yes. And I would consider Armstead a defensive tackle as well.
Okay. I would also add, as much as I admire Kittle, and I really admire him, Buckner was the best player on the 49ers.
I agree, and the coaches gave him that honor when they gave him the Bill Walsh Award this year. He's better. He's going to get more money. Yeah, and Kittle's great. It's nothing against Kittle. It's just one more thing. Buckner's younger than Kittle, which is surprising because Buckner's been in the league 1 year longer than him.
Tell people what the Bill Walsh Award is.
The Bill Walsh Award, the coaching staff votes on it every year, and it goes to the player who best exemplifies the standard of excellence that Bill Walsh created. And it's basically the team MVP. There's the big awards are the Bill Walsh Award and the Len Eschman Award. That's the one that Colin Kaepernick won his final year with the 49ers. The Eschman Award is voted on by the players, and it goes to the most courageous, inspiring play. Last year it went to Kittle because he was hurt for a couple of games and played through a broken ankle. So usually those are the two most prestigious ones, and this year it went Bill Walsh Award went to Buckner. And again, that's from the coaches.
That's from the coaches. That's a significant point. So this is the guys who evaluate players.
And when fans say that, like, well, DeForest Buckner's numbers were down, he only had 7.5 sacks. Well, if you look closely at the tape, you understand that he was the engine of their entire pass rush. And the coaches understand that as well.
So, although I understand why they got rid of him, because, one, Armstead cost less, and also by getting rid of him, they could sign a lot of other, re-sign or re-up a lot of other players. So in the large scheme of things, there is a logic to it. I don't agree with the logic, but there's a logic, and I respect it. But I don't believe today the 49ers are as good as they were 2 weeks ago.
No question. When you lose your best player, you take a step back. And here's the rub. Armstead was cheaper, so you see the logic in keeping him. But Buckner, $21 million a year, is he worth that? To me, absolutely. And the thing about the NFL, the salary cap goes up about $20-25 million a year. So in a year, that looks like a bargain. I mean, it's cheaper and cheaper every year that goes past. And then with Armstead, $17 million a year, is he worth that? We don't know. If he was the guy from last year, then yes. If he was the guy from 4 years before that, then no. So the Niners have really given big money to people who are mysteries to an extent. Whereas Buckner, even though he's more expensive, he's not going to flop. He's going to continue to be the stud that he is.
Absolutely. And another thing, from what I understand, Buckner is a good guy.
No question. And he was a captain, and he never complained. I mean, they gave him a lot of snaps when they were like a 1-14 team, and he never complained. He was great. And, I want to compare the Niners to the Rams, because the Rams went to the Super Bowl the year before, and now they committed a lot of money to a lot of players, the wrong players, and now they're dismantling their roster. And I'm not saying that's going to be the Niners next year, but it's a cautionary tale, and what the Rams did wrong was they paid the wrong guys. It's not that they gave too much money to certain players. They paid the wrong guys. They paid Aaron Donald. He was the right one, but they gave a lot of money to Jared Goff, Todd Gurley, Brandon Cooks, and they weren't worth it. I mean, is Eric Armstead worth it? We'll see. Is D Ford worth it? We'll see. Quan Alexander, Jimmy Garoppolo. Those are ultimately the contracts that are going to make or break the Niners' window if they have one, sort of like the Rams.
Speaking of the window, I think that's a good transition to Garoppolo and Brady.
Yes.
And if it's okay with you, I'd like to say one thing I learned doing sports. There's a window for teams in all sports. Brian Sabian used to talk to me about it with the Giants. He used to say, Lowell, we have a window now, but the window doesn't stay open long. I have to take advantage of it now. Yeah. And I'd say football even more so. People get hurt. People become free agents. People are out of the league. I believe that the 49ers are really set up. I believe they're really a good team. If any loser in the back to the Super Bowl, I'd say this team does, although it's very hard to do, and it'll be harder without Buckner. The reason I thought they should seriously consider getting Brady and maybe get Brady was I look at their window as a year, a season.
Me too. And that's the NFL.
Yeah, you take it from there.
No, keep going. No, you're doing great. I totally
I'm doing good. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I look at it as a year, and I wrote that I think they should really get rid of Jimmy and that they should get Brady. And a lot of people, well-meaning fans, say, yeah, but Brady's old, he'll be washed up soon, and Jimmy has a lot of potential for years to come. The hell with the years to come. There, you can't think of years to come. You can only think of this coming season. The window could close right away. It may have closed already.
Well, I mean, think back to 2012 when the Niners went to the Super Bowl and lost with Harbaugh. He was out 2 years later. They had a mutual parting with him 2 years later. I mean, that could happen with the Niners. Say the Niners go to the playoffs next year and lose, and then miss the playoffs the year after that. Who knows what happens? The NFL is a crazy place. I mean, Jimmy could be gone. John Lynch could be gone. Kyle could be gone.
Kyle could be gone.
I mean, this happens to people. It happened to Harbaugh. In 2012, it seemed inconceivable, but it happened.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Sean McVay must be worried down in L.A.
No question. I mean, he just missed the playoffs this year. If he misses the playoffs again next year, they could fire him, and no one would be surprised.
Absolutely. So our argument, because Iggy and I both feel this way, is I think we would have preferred to move Jimmy and to bring in Brady. Exactly, for this coming season, because Brady is a better quarterback right now than Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't care who has potential. He's better right now.
And I don't care what the stat said last year, because Jimmy Garoppolo was playing with the best running game and George Kittle and Deebo Samuel. And Tom Brady was playing with no running game and 34-year-old Julian Edelman. There's no comparison. Brady's going to have a terrific season with the Bucs, and that's going to be the Niners' main competition in the NFC.
And I'm reading that a lot of players wanted to go to the Bucs now because of him.
Yes, that's the kind of effect that he has. So nothing against Jimmy Garoppolo, but there's not going to be players around the league that are going to take less money to join the 49ers for the opportunity to play with Jimmy and his 28 career starts. It's not the same thing.
Right. And I'll say a few other things about Jimmy. Everybody talks about his potential and how young he is. Iggy, he's going to be 29 next season.
Correct.
Well, he's not so young anymore.
No.
So that's that. But I want to also give him some credit. I call him, the adjective I use for him is serviceable. Yeah. Not great, not even very good. No. He does some very good things, but he's really limited, and he's very limited at reading the field, at going to his second and third reads. Having said that, he may improve. He may improve to very good. Clearly, Kyle Shanahan sees something in him, although I don't believe Kyle Shanahan is in all the way with him at all. But I think I would never say he's a dog. He's no good. They can't go anywhere with him. He got him to the Super Bowl. Maybe he could do it again. I think Brady is better.
No, right. He's better than Jared Goff. He's better than Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota.
He's better than Derek Carr. He is.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks you'd rather have Jimmy Garoppolo than. But our argument the whole time was, look, you're not just any old team. You're the best team in the league. Any quarterback would die to play for you, including Tom Brady, which was actually reported that the Niners were his first choice, and they turned him down. If Hall of Fame quarterbacks want to play for you, you got to consider it because you don't have a Hall of Famer. You got a guy with promise who's in his 20s. That's different.
You got a guy who may have promise.
May have promise, yes. That's right.
Yeah. And you know, I'm not in anymore. I'm not talking to anybody at the Niners, and they wouldn't tell me anyway. My gut feeling on how these things work, the Niners must have had some serious conversations with Brady and his people.
No question. I would imagine.
You feel that as well, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, it doesn't become public, but yes. How could you not have the conversation? But what if they didn't, they're not doing due diligence. Right. What I find interesting is that they let the report get out that Brady wanted to come to the Niners, that they were his number one choice, and they were not interested, ultimately. Because that puts a lot of pressure on them. Puts a lot of pressure on Jimmy. If he doesn't play as well as Tom Brady next year, all 49er fans know that the Niners could have had Brady, that he wanted to come. And it puts a lot of pressure on Kyle Shanahan, too. If the Niners take a major step back next year, it's not going to take a genius to put 2 and 2 together and figure out that they, said no to Tom Brady, especially if he's tearing it up in Tampa. It puts a lot of pressure on them, I think.
I think so as well. I do, too. I think the pressure is on the general manager, the coach, and the owner, Jed York. I call him the owner. I think his mother and father own it, but let's call him the owner. Yeah. There's a lot of pressure on him, too.
Yeah.
And what's more, Jed has a big ego.
Yeah. Yeah.
He does.
That's right.
He doesn't want to look like he screwed up yet again.
Yes. And as smart as the 49ers look right now, you miss the playoffs 1 year, you start to look like the Rams. I mean, a year ago, Sean McVay was the genius in the NFL. Now he looks kind of like, like a fraud.
Yesterday's news. It happened in one season. Yeah,
right.
Happened very fast.
Yeah.
Having said that, again, we want to assert that Jimmy Garoppolo could turn into a very good quarterback and may be exactly what the 49ers need. We're both open to that possibility. And trading Buckner may work out for them. We're not saying they're screwed, they're stupid, nothing like that. We're saying these are not the moves we would have preferred.
Right. Like Jimmy could potentially have the Steve Young career arc, because Steve really came into his own in his early 30s. So he was not at his best at 29. But I want to say, I was born in 88. I didn't see Joe Montana's career. But the other day I watched the entire 1981 NFC Championship game on YouTube for the first time, seen clips of it. And I mean, it was a mind-blowing experience. But the first impression was just watching Joe. He was 25.
Joe was 25.
He was 25. He had 25 career starts going into that game. So all I can say first off is Jimmy's not Joe. He's never going to be Joe. He's not. He might be Steve, and Steve was great, but he's not.
No,
Joe.
He'll never be Steve. I'll get into it. No way will he be Steve.
Okay,
but tell me what you saw that was really salient about Joe Montana.
Well, he was the best player in the field. He was the most confident player in the field. I knew that he made that great throw to win the game at the end, but I didn't realize that he played so confidently the entire time and made very difficult plays. Like when I was watching, I was thinking, oh, this is like Patrick Mahomes, what I saw in Miami. I mean, Mahomes threw some picks, and he was going against a tough defense, but really he had supreme confidence, and you kind of felt like he was going to get it done the whole time. Early in the game, there was a 3rd and 7. Joe Montana rolls out to the right and hits Charlie Young for 17 yards, and he throws it over to Ed Too Tall Jones. It looks a lot like the play that they win the game on to Dwight Clark. I mean, he must have made 4 or 5 plays in the game where I was dropped my jaw. Like, wow, he's much more athletic than I thought. He's much more daring than I thought. I mean, I always kind of thought of like the guy throwing the slant pass. No, he can make some amazing athletic plays. Very athletic.
And the other thing, Iggy, is perfect arm motion. Perfect delivery. And feet always in the right place.
That's right. Yeah.
Bill used to work. I used to see them, like you'd work with a pitcher.
Yes.
Where's your foot and your arm follows through. They spent so much time with that.
I could see it. I mean, and there was something almost uncanny about Joe's ability to put the ball where it needed to be. It's almost like he was like the ball. The ball was on a string, or he had like control of it in the air. It's just I'd never seen anything like it.
Well, I've told you this story, and it's relevant to what you're saying now. Maybe a few years before Bill Walsh died, he was giving a talk on quarterback somewhere, and he watched some old film of Joe Montana, and he called me and said, "Lo, I want to tell you, I hadn't seen Joe pass in a long time, and I was just at home watching some film of Joe, and his voice got really misty, and he said, every pass was exactly where it had to be, every pass." Yeah. And Bill was someone who never praised people. And I heard in his voice, watching Joe, he fell in love with Joe, the quarterback, all over again. Right. He had never in his life. He was the perfect quarterback for Bill. And in many ways, Joe was the perfect quarterback. And that was Bill just before he died.
And that's the point. Like, a lot of people talk about, and I didn't watch Joe, but people maybe my age and younger think, well, Joe Montana didn't have a strong arm. He was a system quarterback. He was a product of Bill Walsh. But Walsh was in awe. And when I watched that game against the Cowboys NFC Championship, I mean, I was in awe of Bill's system, of course, but there was so much that Joe did beyond it. I mean, creating plays that weren't drawn up. I mean, obviously the last one at Dwight Clark is the ultimate example, but he did that throughout the game. He was
that play was drawn up.
Of course.
They used to practice that play.
Yes, absolutely. But the way I saw it, too, was Joe's instinct to have the little pump fake to get Ed Too Tall Jones to jump.
Got it.
That was an amazing athletic instinct that Joe had. That really, because he released the ball as Ed Too Tall Jones was coming down. If he had thrown it right away, maybe that guy would jump and knock it down.
Got it.
Joe had that. He had all these perfect athletic instincts that were impressive. He could buy time in the pocket and wait and allow people to get open downfield, which is something only the greatest quarterbacks can do. It was evident. I mean, he's 25 years old, and he was the best player on the field, and he did make mistakes in that game. He had 3 picks and a fumble. One of the picks wasn't his fault. The fumble wasn't his fault, but 2 were his fault, and he, led the game-winning drive easily. But there were other things in that game that stood out that I thought were really interesting, like listening to the broadcast. Vin Scully did the play-by-play, and he's talking right at the beginning, and he says, Bill Walsh told me he's going to pass the ball in the first play of the game, and they did. Coaches used to tell the announcers what they were going to do.
Bill, what interesting guy.
So
what do you think? What do you think about it? And didn't he pass a lot early?
Yes, 7 of the first 8 plays were passes. I mean, it's not.
What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you?
It's not like Joe Montana was a game manager. I mean, he was the engine of the offense, and they were establishing him right away. And they ran the ball a lot.
And testing the secondary.
Testing the secondary and getting all of their weapons involved. First pass went to Mike Schumann.
Our friend, Mike.
Yeah, I think the first drive was six passes, 5 completions, 4 different receivers. Like, establishing all my guys.
But another thing, the wisdom, at least up until then in the NFL, was you run to establish the pass.
Right.
Bill was passing to establish the run.
No question. And that was part of his brilliance, going against what everyone else would expect.
Absolutely.
But I do like that he gets all of his weapons involved. It's like a chess player getting his bishop out early, getting his.
I love it. Like, I love it.
I don't want to forget about you. You got to be in the game, and he was great at that. It was really fun to watch his scripted first drive. It was perfect, and they scored a touchdown. It was easy. But there were all these little things about the game that was surprising to me, like punting back in 1981 was a joke. The Niners punter punted with bare foot and could barely get the ball 35 yards down the field. The Cowboys punter was their quarterback. It's kind of interesting how much more scientific the league has gotten since then.
And specialized.
So specialized. Now the Niners, not just the Niners, but teams are signing punters from Australia, like the rugby league. Anyway.
I want to tell you another thing about Bill.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was a lot easier to interview assistant coaches in those days. It's now like the Pentagon. But anyway, so I was interviewing someone, and I don't remember who, but I was walking down the hall with, I think, Kirk Reynolds, the PR guy, and there was a little room to my right, and the door was open. It almost looked like a closet, Iggy. And I looked in the room, and there's Bill Walsh sitting at a little desk. He has a yellow memo pad, and he's doing the game plan. He has a ruler, and he's making little plays. He had a big office, with a shower and couches, and, you could look out on the field. He had a balcony. But when it came to doing his game plan, he was in this little closet like a little boy. And he looked up and he said, "Hi, Lowell." I said, "Hi, Bill. What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I'm doing the game plan." And he was
so funny.
On a yellow piece of paper.
That's so funny. He just was in love with writing it out and seeing it and drawing it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and he was so innocent. He goes, "Hi, Lowell," like that.
So calm. Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah,
like
and he was in love. That's what he lived to do.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I had my eye on Walsh as much as possible, like during the broadcast, to see how he acted on the sideline. And during the final drive, the crisis moment, probably the most pressurized moment of his life, it was interesting. They would cut to him, and he'd be talking to Joe on the sideline, and they'd be discussing what they wanted to do, and it looked like both of them, but especially Bill, was in a library. Like it was a Wednesday, and they were discussing theories of things they might be able to do. Like, he was so calm. And I'm so used to covering Harbaugh and Shanahan, who have been extremely excitable in moments like that.
Especially Harbaugh, very much so.
Yes.
Well, here's what Bill told me. First of all, let me give context. In real life, Bill was not calm. Bill was extremely emotional. He would get I've told you, he would get very fretful, and he worried all the time. He was a worrier, and he was a crier. He used to cry.
That's amazing.
So I said, Bill, you're a very mercurial personality. Were you that way on the field during games? And he said, it's the craziest thing. Well, no. He said when the game started, it was as though a big sheet of glass came down between me and the action on the field. And I could see through the glass, but I couldn't hear anything. He said, I never heard anything. I was completely distant and calm, and that's how I comported myself during the game. And then he said when the game ended, the glass would vanish. I would hear all the noise, and I'd be emotional again.
Yeah, that's what it looked like. It looked like I was watching a doctor who was describing a surgery to, a class full of students, but behind a window. Like, okay, now they're going to be taking apart the heart and going to this ventricle here, but like he wasn't really involved, and he was just thinking about things, what could work and might not. It's like, this is the biggest moment of your life. And I've seen Kyle Shanahan get very tense, and Jim Harbaugh as well, and every coach, but not him at all.
No, he didn't. One of the reasons he didn't get the job at the Cincinnati Bengals is that Paul Brown felt he was too emotional and had too many highs and lows, emotional highs and lows. And it's true, he was very emotional and had very many highs and lows. What Paul didn't understand was two things. He was the most brilliant guy in football. How do you not have him as your head coach? And two, he managed it during games.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, till the day he died, Bill was pissed off at Paul Brown. He was really, really bitter about not getting that job in Cincinnati.
I wonder if that was, if that was the impetus for him to become the greatest coach of all time. If that was the driving force he needed.
Yes, I don't think he got a head coaching job till 49, and I think it was 49, and he used to complain to me about that. He felt bitter, passed over, that kind of thing. And, I used to think, well, you're Bill Walsh, you can get past this. But, people don't get past slights like that. I mean, I don't think that Bill dwelled on it every day, but it was there. It was a wound in his soul, as it would have been a wound in mine.
Yeah, it's an interesting comparison to think of him compared to Kyle Shanahan. I forget. Bill Walsh didn't become a head coach until he was 49. That's not Kyle Shanahan's story. It's not Bill Belichick's story. These guys were viewed as superstars very early on. Walsh wasn't. Or if he was, the secret was suppressed by people who were in the know. So
well, Paul Brown tried to hurt him when he left, tried to put the word, according to Bill, put the word around the league not to hire this guy, and San Diego took him. Bill was desperate, was desperate. It's interesting. Now, look, I want to say something. Is Kyle Shanahan as influential in the league as Bill Walsh? Of course not. Is he as good a play designer as Bill? Maybe so.
In certain ways, yes.
In certain ways, I think Kyle Shanahan, I look at what he does, and I'm going to use a word, it's gorgeous.
Well,
and it's
let me make
daring.
a distinction. With the run game and with the play action stuff, I think that's probably even more sophisticated than what Bill was doing.
I love it, of course. The only issue is Bill won 3 Super Bowls, and he set the team up to win more. The next year, George Seifert won 1, and all credit to George, but it was a lot of players from Bill and the system from Bill. Kyle hasn't done that yet. Bill never lost the Super Bowl. George Seifert never lost the Super Bowl. So Kyle Shanahan has a lot to prove over time, and part of what he has to prove is, can he make the right decision at the crisis moment? Bill could.
Right, because
and we have to see that he can.
Absolutely. It's not like when people, if you wonder what made Bill Walsh great, it wasn't just his play designs. It wasn't just his playbook, which was brilliant in and of itself, but it was the decisions he made under pressure. And that's what I was so impressed with, just how calm he was. You could see it. He had this look where he had one hand underneath his elbow and his thumb in his mouth, a very professorial pose. You know what I'm talking about?
I do indeed. Yes,
I'm the most calm person in the world right now. I know you're upset. I know it's the fourth quarter, but I got this. We're smart. We got this. I don't know.
Bill was interesting in other ways. After wins, he could be very difficult. He could be condescending, and often, I'm sorry, to the media, of course, not to his players, and especially to Ira and me, and sometimes Glenn Dickey. Because, we probably gave him more trouble than other people did. In retrospect, how the hell you could give him trouble, I don't know. But he would be very condescending. Like, I'm so much smarter than you. And we took it in stride. I like Bill. After losses, he would be what my mother would call a mensch, which means just a great person, a hero. Yeah. He would spend as much time as you wanted after a loss, and he was dying inside. Coaches die after a loss.
Yes.
And he would answer forthrightly and at length. And it used to just blow my mind. You would expect a guy to be a jerk after a loss and nice after a win, but Bill was the exact opposite.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, before we move on from the NFC Championship, I want to give one more person a shout-out. I noticed in this game the right tackle for the 49ers, Keith Fahnhorst, was fantastic. I'd never seen him play before. He went against this legend, Ed Too Tall Jones, who was supposed to be the greatest, and I shut him out, made him a non-factor. And not only that, Keith Fahnhorst could pull. He could pull and lead on running plays, and he was very athletic, and he could block people down the field. He looked like a real hell of a player.
I want to tell you something. Of all the athletes I covered in all my life, in terms of who I had affection for, he would be in the top 5. Keith Fahnhorst was such a wonderful, wonderful person. And Iggy, tell our listeners what you told him in a conversation you had with him not long ago, before Keith died.
Well, what happened was Dwight Clark died. And I believe I wrote an article about it, and I called Keith to get a quote from a former player about Dwight Clark, and I said I got his wife on the phone, and she gave Keith Sue, and I asked, how do you? Dwight Clark just died. how do you feel about that? I forget exactly what I asked, but he didn't know.
He didn't know.
He didn't know. So I actually broke the news to Keith Farnhorst and helped soothe him and his wife in that they were so upset. And we talked about it for about 45 minutes. And then he died a few months later.
No, Iggy, I think he died a few weeks later.
A few weeks later.
Or am I wrong?
He died very, very shortly.
Very soon. He was a guy, it was so different in the old days. You could just hang around the locker room like a baseball clubhouse used to be. Yeah. And sometimes, it was, at first they were in Redwood City and I lived in Palo Alto. I was close. And I would just hang around because I like to meet people. I like to talk to people. And people I would talk to would be Keith. He was just, because he was an offensive lineman, he was so normal. He'd just ask me questions about me, about my background. When does an athlete ever do that? And another one I talked to was Charlie Young. Charlie Young is not normal. He is a character, but he is the most interesting, warm-hearted, brilliant person. And I would spend a lot of time just listening to Charlie Young.
Well, I got to say, in this game, he was terrific. He made some big catches. He looked like a hell of a tight end.
He was USC, right?
Yes. He looked really good in this game.
Oh, he was terrific. And they moved him out for Russ Francis. And I could tell you, now, Russ I liked very much as well. And maybe Russ was even better. But I could tell you Charlie Young was really not happy about that.
Real quick, I got some more observations. I mean, Dwight Clark, I've never seen him play a full game before. My impression of Dwight Clark is a guy who made a catch, a tall guy who made a catch. He was really good. I mean, earlier he had 2 touchdown catches in that game, not just that one. There was one earlier where he ran like a post route and shook the guy so hard he made him spin around. It was one of the best routes of the game I've ever seen. He was a highly skilled wide receiver.
Yes, and a tough guy.
Tough guy, go over the middle, catch the ball.
I got another name that you should talk about, Eric Wright.
Oh, my goodness, yes. So I'm looking and I'm thinking, wow, it's going to be fun to watch Ronnie Lott. He's one of the greatest defenders of all time. He struggled in that game. He was a rookie. He gave up a couple long catches and had a couple of long PIs. Eric Wright was kind of the hero. He was a rookie, too. He broke up a pass in the end zone earlier in the game, and then after the catch that Dwight Clark made to give the Niners the lead, the Cowboys got the ball back with about a minute left, and I think their first play or early on in their drive, Danny White hits Drew Pearson over the middle, and Pearson catches the ball about 15 yards downfield and looks like he's going to break away like Jerry Rice, and Eric Wright reaches out and grabs him with one hand by the horse collar and pulls him down from behind, and a couple plays, maybe the next play, the Niners force a fumble and recover, but that, like reaching out, it was like the hand of God. He saved the game, and was just as important as Dwight Clark.
Eric Wright was a great player. And, Iggy, have you ever met him? Because he turns up at various functions. He is a thoughtful, pleasant, grown-up. I love to spend time with Eric Wright. I love to spend time with him.
Yes, I've met him a couple of times. He seems like a very, very warm, affectionate person.
Thoughtful, grown up, just a pleasure to be around. Now, I want to tell a Ronnie Lott story, which you know, but I've never told on the air. When George Seaver was the defensive coordinator, each player had his assignment. And Ronnie sometimes before the play would tell Eric or Dwight Hicks or whoever, I know my assignment is such and such, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to do this. And all of a sudden the play would happen, and Ronnie wasn't doing anything that he was supposed to do. And a lot of the time it worked out. He was a genius, and it was great. But other times, the runner or the ball would come right where he was supposed to be, and he would really get burned. And some of the defensive coaches were really angry about it. So they went to George Seaver, and they said, well, Ronnie didn't do what he was supposed to do. And George was really cute. He said, look, it'll be on film. He said, the next team we play is going to look at that. And he said, they're not going to know what the hell Ronnie's doing because we don't even know what the hell Ronnie's doing. So it'll work in our favor.
Didn't you tell me that he would tell his teammates on the field, like, I got a feeling?
I got a feeling. Yeah, right.
I got a feeling. That is so funny.
And he must have had a lot of feelings because he's a Hall of Fame player.
Absolutely. And so what Seifert thought was, like, other teams are going to break their brains trying to figure out what this call is because it's
exactly. What was
sense. What was the call here? Little did they know there was no call. It's just
there was no call. Ronnie was just freelancing it, and he said, "We don't know what the hell he's doing. They won't know what the hell he's doing."
That's funny. You have to be one of the best players of all time to get away with freelancing. Otherwise, coaches won't put up with it.
That's right, but he was Ronnie Lott. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I guess he had a good batting average when he was freelancing.
He had a good batting average, yeah.
So, Dad, what's your life looking like these days?
Well, I had a story this morning.
Yeah.
My wife, your mom, has a wound on her above her ankle on her right leg. I mean, it's serious, and it's deep and it's oozing. We were concerned that it was infected, so we called her doctor, and they said, "Come in." We went, Iggy. We were the only person there.
Wow.
It was a completely empty waiting room.
Right.
And, usually how you have to wait at a doctor.
Yeah.
She went in so fast. I think he was happy to see her.
Right. It's like the world ended last week, and you're the only survivors.
We were the only survivors. We drove over there. There were no cars. I mean, it looked like a bomb had dropped. Yeah. So she went in, and I didn't even stay in the waiting room. I didn't want to be in there. I stayed outside and waited and read. But then I had to go. She had to buy supplies like gauze and bandages and all stuff. So I had to go to the drugstore to buy these things. Mm-hmm. It made me frightened because you're supposed to not be in crowds. And so I put on these latex, whatever, gloves. Mm-hmm. I look like a surgeon. I had these gloves on, and I felt really, really, holy mackerel, the whole world has changed. And the Helen, who's the manager of the store, the doctor had given us samples, and I wanted to show her the various samples of the various implements we needed. And I handed it to her, and she said, "I don't want to touch it." And of course she didn't want to touch it. Yeah. Of course she didn't. Yeah. And I felt like such a schmuck for handing it to her. But everybody's wary of everybody. Everybody is a threat to everybody, Iggy.
Yeah, it's awful. It's terrible. I mean, normally I do like social distancing. I mean, it's kind of nice to be by yourself. But when you do have to be around people, like right now, everyone's very tense. Like I just had an unpleasant experience at the butcher. Asking for a steak. I went to the butcher, to the little tiny grocery store around the corner. You had to wait in line for a half hour to get in. A lot of people wearing masks and gloves. You get inside, and I went straight to the butcher. I asked, "Hey, do you have those marinated steaks that you usually have?" "No." "Okay, then I'll have this one right here." "Which one?" "This one right here." "I can't read your mind, bro," with the passive-aggressive bro. A guy like, younger than me. I say, "This New York steak." He goes, "Which one?" I said, "This one right here." And he said, "I can't follow your finger, bro." So since he did that, I asked him to get the one furthest away from me. I said, "The one closest to me." He said, "Oh, the one furthest away from me?" I said, "Yeah, that's right." So we got it. And then he said, "Anything else?" I said, "No, that's good. Thanks." I was like, dude, like times like this, you'd hope people would be even more civil, but I don't see that. Or at least I didn't see that today, which is too bad. So I came home and I'm hanging out with my wife.
Well, I can tell you that at the CVS pharmacy at Lincoln Square in Oakland, they're really, really nice. And yeah, they're really nice. I think you just got maybe the guy was having a bad day, or maybe he's a jerk. But you got that. That was a bad day. Okay. Final thing. How do you amuse yourself? What do you do on lockdown?
Well, we haven't done this podcast in a couple of weeks. Since we've last done this, I've probably watched 30 boxing matches on YouTube. I can't stop. I've gone through the entire history of boxing. I've gone from the 1920s. I found clips of Benny Leonard. I've watched Joe Louis from when he was 21 to when he was 37. I watched Ezra Charles, Jersey Joe Walcott, Rocky Marciano. I watched all the welters, all the middles. I mean, now I feel like I'm an authority on boxing, at least compared to my generation, because most of the people my age haven't put in the 3 weeks necessary to get caught up on the history of boxing. That's what I've been doing. What about you?
Iggy, you've never been to a live boxing match.
You're right. I really haven't. I wish I could.
I've been to hundreds because it's my favorite sport. Maybe when all this is over, we'll buy 2 tickets to a fight, and we'll go. I'd love to take you to a fight.
Well, whenever I put on YouTube a fight from like 1980 to 1984, I see your head popping up right in the front row, watching very diligently. And then whenever the round ends, you look down, you make a lot of notes like you're a movie critic.
You could see me at Hearns Hagler. I'm right in the first row, I think.
Hearns Hagler, also Hearns Leonard 1, 82.
Listen, I want to tell you what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And this is so geeky. I'm a geek. Charles Dickens is the greatest novelist in the English language. There's no even discussion on that one. I had a few gaps on Dickens. I mean, he wrote 15 novels, and they're long suckers. So I got nothing to do. I'm just around the house. So I'm reading like a maniac. I read Dombey and Sons. I read Hard Times, which I had read but forgot. And now I'm reading a silly book called Nicholas Nickleby, which is his third novel. He was probably in his 20s, Iggy. Wow. It is a laugh riot. It's 1,000 pages. I'm 700 pages into it. And it just makes me laugh out loud. And I think, right, this is why he's the greatest. Because he wrote Nicholas Nickleby. No one ever heard of it. It's not one of his famous novels like, David Copperfield. And it's a laugh riot. So I'm just reading Dickens
when he wrote it.
And he was such a genius. It's unbelievable.
This is gaps. I had a big gap in my boxing knowledge, which I shouldn't have had because I'm your son. I mean, come on. So I need to fill that in. And it's fun. Like, I was watching a lot of Joe Louis yesterday, and I'm trying to understand why people consider him the greatest, or some people do, because he fought a lot of bums. But when you go back and look at, like, beginning of his career, how lethal and skilled and advanced he was at, like, 22, I get it. I mean, there was never been a fighter like that. I mean, not Tyson. Not Ali.
Oh, God, no.
122. I mean, he had probably the best jab of all time, and his left hook was just as good as his right cross, and either of those could have been the best punches of all time. I mean, what a phenomenon.
And a couple of other things, Iggy. He threw punches in combinations. It would be a jab, right, left hook. Tyson only threw one punch at a time.
Right.
So if you got hit by one punch by Lewis, you got hit by three.
That's right.
That's a big deal. Ray Robinson was the same way. And I think we could end with this. Come back to Bill Walsh.
Yeah.
Bill was a boxing guy. And one of the things we liked about each other is we knew pretty much, we had seen the same fights. I don't mean in person, on TV and film. And we were a match for each other. And we had an ongoing debate who would have won, Ali or Lewis. And I said Ali. I disagree with myself now.
Right, you grew up with Ali, he grew up with Lewis.
Yes, but now, looking at them now, when I look at them, I think Lewis would have taken the fight to Ali, and Ali couldn't have hurt him. He didn't hit hard enough. So I'd say I now agree with Bill Walsh. He was smarter than me on that one, too.
Interesting. Well, I mean, I watched the fight between young Ali and Liston, and he made Liston quit. He also made George Foreman quit. Two big, heavy punchers.
Well, he knocked him out, but he was out of gas, yeah.
He was out of gas. But, I mean, Joe Louis wouldn't have quit. Joe Louis wouldn't have been out of gas. And if Ali tried to do the rope-a-dope with Joe Louis would have knocked him out. He wouldn't have missed.
He would have hurt him.
He would have hit him in the body. He would have made Ali off his hands, and he would have knocked him out. He would have finished that fight. So, I mean, Ali might have been able to beat him on points because, there's that famous fight with Billy Conn, the light heavyweight, almost beat Joe Louis on points. And then he wanted to fight in the last round, got knocked out. I don't know. It might be interesting, but it'd be fun to see that fight. And it would have been fun to see Ali face Rocky, too, because it'd be interesting to see if Ali could have kept Rocky off him.
You mean Rocky Marciano?
Yeah, because, I mean, Ali didn't hit that hard, and Rocky was just trying to, get into your chest. It would have been an interesting matchup.
Okay, I think we've talked a lot. Covered a lot of ground. We got Bill Walsh. We wove him in at the end. Bill, I miss you. I'm thinking about you. And Iggy.
Yeah.
Let's goodbye, everybody. Let's call each other back because I have something I want to tell you.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.